Good evening, everyone. This is great. I love it that everybody is just chatting with everybody else. So it's the social hour. I'm Liza Bernard, and Sarah and I are very pleased to welcome you this evening. We're waiting for a few people, but I do like to get started promptly at 7. So I'm going to start with the housekeeping and announcements. The housekeeping is please turn off your cell phones and other distracting devices. And the way we're going to do this evening is I'm going to do a brief introduction of both the poets, and then after the readings, because it's pretty crowded, I'm going to ask you to stand up and kick the back of your chair and just lean it against any wall. Enough people here have done that. Know the routine. The books and refreshments, the homemade cookies, are going to stay out at the counter, and the poets are going to stay back here to sign books. It just spreads people out. Sort of. I just want to mention that we do have a pretty eclectic calendar of events coming up, and we're confirming more events for this year and into next year like crazy. But the big speaker, Archer Mayer, will be returning with his new Joe Gunther novel on the 11th. And we have Cy Montgomery and Elizabeth Marshall Thomas on the 25th, and their book is Tamed and Untamed, Close Encounters of the Animal Kind. And then in early November, we have a really interesting book by Finn Murphy. It's called The Long Haul, and it's Trucker's Tales from Life on the Road, and he's actually coming in his 18-wheeler. I'm really nervous about how he's going to get through the parking lot. And I also just want to remind you all of the Cleopatra Mathis Poetry and Prose series that's ongoing in San Bernardino. Tomorrow, Tomas Moran, I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation, will be reading his poetry, and on the 19th, Caitlin Greenidge will be reading from her novel, and we'll be there with books for those. Encourage you to sign up for our newsletter and check our website, because I post things up as soon as we get them confirmed. So tonight we have an evening with international flavor, to say the very least. We took these two authors. I think they've covered most countries on the planet. With Grace is Anne Shivas' first collection, and it reflects time spent in Scotland, Vermont, and Israel. She earned her Bachelor's of Education at Dunfermline College in Edinburgh and her Master's at London University Institute of Education. She was certified at the Jerusalem School of the Alexander Technique, and then she earned a Master of Fine Arts in Poetry at Drew University. So she has studied all over the place. And having recently returned to the Upper Valley from Scotland, she currently practices and teaches the Alexander Technique and leads an Osher class in Scottish literature. And we've sure had trouble finding Scottish dictionaries. But her poetry reflects her work and her travels. And Ewa Chrusciel was born in Poland and studied English, Polish, and world literature at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow. She earned her PhD in literary studies and contemporary poetry from Illinois State. Eva has been on the faculty of Colby Sawyer since 2006, and she is an award-winning bilingual poet with 3 books written in Polish and 3 books of poems in English. Her poetry has been translated and published internationally and in numerous journals. And without further ado, please help me welcome Anne Shivas.
Thank you very much, Liza, for that lovely introduction, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. And it's wonderful to see so many friends in the audience. Am I close enough to the mic? Okay, good. So as Liza said, I'm from Scotland. I grew up in Scotland, and I was there until my mid-20s. We spent our summer holidays in the north of Scotland by the coast, and I'm going to begin with a poem that goes back to that time. And I should add that I became a vegetarian when I was 3 years old in a family who weren't vegetarians. And so there's a little reference to that here. This is lines. The seagull engine unwound and sputtered under my father's strong arm. Fut, 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 fut. Then cast off, Sea Bear motored out between harbour walls to eagle-headed rocks, Craig and Dargety. Gulls squawking in evenings long as the sky, from horizon to troop head. My mother hauled creels near rocks, coloured cork buoys on ropes marked our own. Tossed back small crabs, hermit crabs, starfish, kept mature lobster who waved blue-black claws in fish boxes, curled up their tails. Later, we followed gulls in Gamery Bay, put down lines, lead sinker-laden orange twine, 6-hooked and feathered over the gunnels, brought up, flashing, sleek, silver blue, fluttering mackerel. Whacked against a bench, the fish fell still. Silver and blood bled into bilges, white nights stilled. To the girls, wee Buddhists in the bow, the boat grew long. Sunset set in stone, red across sky. I should say it's just such a huge pleasure to be reading from this brand new book with lovely cover artwork done by my sister. It was a benefit of being in Scotland for the last 3.5 years. So the next poem I'm going to read after I met my husband in London and we married and I went straight to live in Israel, in Jerusalem. We lived in a very beautiful part of Jerusalem, a lovely old village, and there was a series of steps from the village square down to our house which were called the Garden of Eden Steps. This is Eve's Garden, Jerusalem. You would think this must be Eve's garden, so full of fat green figs, silvery olives, almonds whose blossom like snow signal small spring. That's an expression from the French. French, when the almonds blossom, they call it petit printemps, and it's kind of an early pre-spring. Plumping cactus and sunbirds, flashes of blue on aloe's fiery flowers. Summer is ripening peaches, yellow drops of lemons, walnuts, cherries, round red pomegranates and plums. Each vast night's air dense with scent of jasmine, rose. But under summer's fig-darkened awning, steps wind from Wadi, which is the Arabic for valley, to the village square, where children play games of chance and dare passing cars, or indulge the local passion, throwing stones. And I have to think that actually throwing stones is quite mild now. So after 11 years in Israel, my husband and I came to Vermont to live. So the first year was a very hard change of climate. So I'm going to read 2 poems, 2 Vermont poems, both celebrating winter. This is Winter Song, Leaves of Ice. A sure sign of coming winter, earth opens dark cones, sprouts spears of ice, curling over, twisting, grown in the first hard frost. First snow. Fine first snow dusts leaves on the forest floor, each shape, maple or oak, frosted stiff, iced, crisp, the ground a layered tray of browned leaf biscuits. And there's a Scots word in this next little section, and that word is corrinuchin, and it refers to the noise that a burn is making, but it's really a sort of a gossipy chat. Stems of ice. Squat stems of ice like rows of dwarfs with pointed hats and lace-trimmed skirts, or tapered hand-dipped candles, pendants of etched glass hang on ice-sleeved branches. A corrinuchin burn with crystal elephant feet. And late snow. Snow on trees forms ribbons, loops and drapes over branches, like long white adders, their bodies falling in garlands. Crinkled snow swatches are ruched and drawn in waves, a concertina of peaks and troughs. In winter, we curry in, gang up and doon. And that expression, curry in, means to snuggle in, to snuggle down. And this next one, again, I end with some Scots words. So the expression is of fa and far we are, which means of who and where we are. And there's a reference to runes, which would be to the Viking writing. It kind of looks like little trees. And there are runes found on odd places around Scotland where the Vikings spent some time. So this is Wind Slams a Lion's Paw. Early morning, trees sheathed and sleeved in silver ice, milky hush, earth's breath close. On the windshield, wind slams a lion's white paw. On the frozen river, storm-dusted, mackerel-backed, gins twist high white funnels, and criss-cross turkey V's of back-country skis mark the hill. Against fences' staves, dried notes rise, ghost flowers of fall. The field a slate of ruins, written on the run. Deer, snowshoe rabbit, coyote, fox, parallel tracks, hieroglyphs of fa and far we are. So in the course of writing the poems that became this book, I began to explore a little bit more the use of Scots, the use of Scots in my home, and then the sense that I wanted to bring it more into my writing. And this was a poem thinking back over the use of Scots in my home, and there is a few Scots words in here. There's the word blether, which is to chatter on, a bit like blather. Bairns are children, and then the final four words are scunner, semmet, feel, or foo, and they mean to be annoyed. Semmet is a word for a man's undervest. Feel is foolish, and foo is drunk. So this is words. My father spoke 2 languages, one for family, fellow doctors, surgeons of the Royal College, Edinburgh neighbours. Another for speaking to old friends for Aberdeen, the Broch, Peterhead, Gamery or Crivery. He slid between 2 tongues, in the northeast, or at home, having a good blether on the wall phone outside the bathroom with Charlie, Bernie or Johnston, Beatrice or Lila. Oh, it's yourself? Fit like. Aye, nae bad. Aye, the bairns are all doing fine at school. Where there were words we dared not use, words sick as scunner, semmet, feel, or foo. So then, sort of moving into wanting to use more Scots, I decided to translate some poems into Scots, and I translated, perhaps my most fun was translating a couple of poems from Hebrew into Scots. And one for today is I translated Galway Canal, the Vermont Poet Laureate's poem Blackberry Eating, into Scots. So this is Brummel Eating. And there's lots of Scots in this, so I'm just going to read it, and just you'll get most of it, I think, but some of the words will just wash over you. Brummel Eating. I lew to gae out at summer's end, atween the sonse called black brummels, to eat brummels first thing i' the morn, the stems guy jagged, a pay they gat fu kennin yon black eart o' Brummel Mackin. And as I ston atween them, pooing the stems to my moo, the saftest ains fa near as magic to my lip, just as words aftimes day, antrin words, like sowens, squish and squeenge, money-lettered, ein-syllable junts, that I squish, pliter and squatter in yon still feart cranroof called tongue o' Brummel Eaton at summer's end. I actually sent that to Galway after I'd written it, and I got a very lovely note back from him saying how much he enjoyed it. So I'm going to read a little bit from a slightly longer poem now, and it's the title poem. And again, this is it's mostly in Scots, but I think it's a pretty understandable Scots. Again, there's from the northeast of Scotland, which is the Scots I grew up hearing, quite a lot of the words like who and where, they begin with an F instead of a WH, but otherwise sound quite similar. So this is An Wee Whit Grace. Fish hook sharp, and let me see just one or two things. So I should just mention there's a date in here, that's 1707, which was the year that the Scottish Parliament dissolved itself and kind of agreed to send representation to Westminster instead. And then another Scots word, which is malacarouse, and it means to misuse something, to treat it badly. Fish hook sharp, lochen deep, she holds her peaty vision dark in the pupil of her eye, no reflected sky. Jet and far as space, as full of light, the gleg and spark, Scottish child, div ye ken your place in the universe? Far's hame. Ye have to keep saying, it's all richt, it's nae sae bad, what was hail wasna ever broken. Here you know the lie of the land. Fan she was a fish, a flip o' her tail freed her. The world unfurls itself like a bolt o' fabric in remnant kings, or a wind-whipped saltire. She's looking back to afore 1707, maybe into a Pictish time 2,000 years ago. Doon deep in the Caledonian wood, what a bonny diversity. The adder coiled asleep on sunlit path, nae feart, though watchful, through its peaty eye. And wee whit grace, does it uncoil itself, lead head first in lang successive loops into the thick grass and tangle o' hawthorn, aneath the muckle and zagging oaks. Scottish child, ye have to pay attention, tak care and mind how ye go. Ask, fit ails ye. On a high road above the Strathmore Vale, she traces the snake with her finger, its meander incised along the top of an Aberlemno stone. Its Pictish kin, the golden sea god, unfurls, part snake or fish and dragon, flies from towers and church spires in Brechin and Kirriemuir. Was it a totem, the python bag her mither carried? soft, smooth, the scales stroked one way, catchy the other, say like ourselves. The girl would steal in sometimes to her mother's room just to sit with this snake, touch its skin, her eye held by black on grey shapes, the bag snapped shut. She was aye careful not to malaccaroose. Though we were never meant to be tae good, dark and stiff as an old kirk elder, never meant to deny ourselves our much. It wasna the women and snakes fa cleared us out o' Eden. It was the mannies with their chainsaws and trucks fa cut it a' doon. I think I've got time just for two more. So this is an elegy for my grandfather, and this is Coins Flowed Like Water. After the summer my grandfather died, I became afraid of the cold, certain God who took him away, hid deep in sweet purple lilac or beneath a yew tree, until tired I crept back to the house. I knew little of death. But that holiday my father and brother left Gamery, I walked in a vacuum of sucked out air. Our sooty grandpa, magician, in whose hands coins flowed like water between each knuckle, and sponge balls doubled and disappeared. The quiet man, whose favourite book was Huck Finn, learned magic in St. Louis in the 1920s, came back to Aberdeen with a shiny top hat, black and white wand, toured the small towns, and conjured a rabbit for a future queen. I remember his maroon armchair by a coal fire, the children who sat cross-legged, spellbound, hushed for shows. Hey presto, who lit that world, himself disappeared. And then this is the last one. This is the last one I'll read. This has an epigraph from a Scottish poet, Norman MacCaig. And the epigraph is, "My true self, my aimless wanderer. No marked path. I take my mother's strong hand on the stony beach between Crivey and Gamery, and lead her between rocks and wobbly stones, a way least hazardous, where she can follow my footsteps as I once followed hers, where, hand in hand, we collected wee cowrie shells she kept in matchboxes, and I found pretty red-white spotted top shells I loved to death. Here, where I first became sure-footed, running, leaping, laughing over rocks, a girl goat, now I scan the mix of stone, rock, and broken shell for pottery shards, edges softened from years of tidal tumbling, not searching for anything particular, not on any marked path, but knowing the shards that are mine to pocket, minding in hand and foot, and eye and heart, the trust in my true self, my mother's gift.
Thank you so much. Lovely. I wanted to say that actually Scottish is my ideal language. But seriously, when I was like 21 maybe, I was doing my master's, because in Poland during communism we didn't have undergraduate and graduate, it was all lumped. And I got this little stipend at the Edinburgh University. But after 3 weeks of studying literature, Scottish literature actually, I prolonged my stay. I forgot to tell my parents because I was so mesmerized with Edinburgh. I forgot my heritage, and I found myself a job in a restaurant then when that ended, because I didn't understand Scottish, and they would say, "Pass me the breed." My English wasn't that strong because it was like at the beginning of my studies, so Scottish wasn't. But it was my dream to pick up that accent, and somehow I got it. So if you ever offer any classes, it really brought that nostalgia for Scotland. But anyway, I'm a little bit scared and excited because the book is released today officially, and some of these poems I've never read, so I will be probably mispronouncing and hiccuping or whatever. But actually, 2 summers ago, I had this enormous desire to go to Lampedusa. And I started to, look for contacts. I have quite a few friends in Italy. I speak Italian. And didn't work out because my 80-year-old dad fell off his bike. He survived, but he was for months in hospital. And since my parents are divorced, I and my brother were the only one who would visit him and stay with him. So I stayed home and I started to write instead about refugees and read all sorts of accounts and watch documentaries. And also, I was lucky to meet 2 volunteers. One of them actually did the cover, Julie Putken, who couldn't be here tonight. But she was in one of the camps in France, and she related stuff to me. And then another volunteer, my husband's friend, Megan Udell, actually left her job and basically abandoned her job to go to a camp in Lesbos in Greece. And she was there on the beach receiving the refugees. So I have factual voices here, often emblematic voices too, but there are several voices of migrants, non-migrants, refugees, voices of archangels, debugs. I don't know if I need to explain to anyone debug. I think Jeff doesn't know. Okay, explain. So in case, because growing up in Poland, we are surrounded by debugs because of the Second World War, and we hear about them, we believe in debugs. So debug, in a sense, traditionally speaking, is this clinging soul, a soul that maybe had a disordered life and has to complete some task, right? And then there is a good spirit, Ibur, that is a good possession, right? So debug is considered a bad possession and it causes havoc. But actually in that book I wanted to collapse the binary and present a debug. At first I thought I would have Ibur and debug, but then I thought I wanted to recuperate a debug and have it as a soul that may be drowned and didn't have a proper burial and is really seeking justice and wants to complete its life by entering us, by giving us a mission. So I'll read those poems. And one more thing also, you wonder of enunciation. You probably know that term, but just wanted to explain for Jeff again. The enunciation in New Testament, enunciation is this event of apparition where Archangel Gabriel appears to Mary, right, and says, "Will you be the mother of God?" And I mapped that historical event or biblical event onto a current migration crisis. And I wanted to pose that question, what does it mean to say yes to a stranger? Because Archangel Gabriel was a total other, a stranger. And if you think about Greek origin of the word stranger, xenos, we also have, it's related to the word xeniteia, which means exile. So we have stranger xenos, xeniteia, which is exile. And for monks of late antiquity, actually, exile was a good thing. It was a positive detachment where you would leave your folks, your community, your family, go to the desert or somewhere and be transformed. And also, xenos is together with xeniteia. They are also cousins, right? Xenophobia, xenophobia, right? So that book very much was my question, what do you do with fear? And the book very much quivers on that brink between openness and fear. Non-migrants' questions. What can you do, migrants? Calcified birds. You perch on the trees at night. You wear painted masks of scarabs. You have beaks. You cast your nests. You pine on trees. You needle. You roam the woods. You wade through the freeze. You come in a veil. You wait under a black chador. You turn up grains, tides, whispers. Your feet, dark, vanished nests, stitched wings off. You perch in a fog. You sit on the comfort tree, on a branch on invisible stretchers. On a log you pound. It is a drumming station. On a log you pound your wings until the dogwood hears. You jump out of mouths with clumps of green, with forsythia. You jump out of doorknobs. You feather the chairs. Swallows exclaim the air. Your feet a precipice. Throat tips, ink-stained, miraculous displacement. Whisper the cliffs, pound wings, until the whole forest hears, until the logs spark into lumens. Can you hear me okay? We are the bride. We were stuck for 2 days amidst the bombs in Ashrafia. A 10-year-old boy came in with a knife, carrying a wedding dress. He cut the dress into many pieces and gave us each a piece. We wore it on our heads and went out into the streets. When snipers see it, they stop shooting. What if we crossed Europe in wedding dresses, our wavelengths stretching infinitely? And I actually just want to say that this is a recorded event. It actually happened, that snipers wouldn't shoot at somebody wearing white, and that the guy who was in that apartment who put the white band and survived made later a movie, and this is like the power of coincidences, where he was Italian, and in Milan he was at the train station, and there was a guy asking him for how to take a train from Milan directly to Sweden. There are no trains like that. And that guy happened to be a survivor of a shipwreck in Lampedusa. And later on, that future director, film director, made a movie. He was actually recording the trip, and he dressed everybody, because of that experience in Syria, he dressed everybody as a wedding crew, so they could cross, Germany and all the other borders without being stopped. They were all dressed nicely. They would cross the Doom Mountains in heels, and they all got to Sweden. It's just incredible. And there is actually a documentary, I showed it last year at Colby Sawyer. It's called Io sono con la sposa, I am with the bride. So the documentary is like, it's being filmed as they cross, right? Very illegal documentary, actually. So the film director was actually detained in Turkey, like for a few weeks when he went to Turkey, right? So now he's released, and the documentary is being shown around the world. Archangel appears to a migrant. Leave towards endlessly stretching waves. There's no lily, I say. His voice rushed. Take your child, take your SIM card and your rosary beads, photos and a radio, one plush toy. How could it be, I thought, but all I let out of me was, yes, be it done. I wanted his fluttering wings to carry me, but they flew on to the next household, bullets in his feathers. The enunciation did not recur, so I confused a smuggler for an archangel. The boat was inflatable, unstable. Now the procession of faces in the waves, staring into the house I knew nothing about. The sea was bound to shake. Refugees poem. How long shall we float, almost near a gleaming source of life, each wave a face, a wake? Had we perhaps entered the heart from the mouths of guns? The waves tightened over us. A wave spawns a face spawns another face. Here you are, whispered the seaweed. You confuse archangels with smugglers. You confused sound for hourglass. Holy trinities on trees remain silent. Give us back our identity, we implore the waters. Trapped, hums the voice in a wave, trapped by dust. As if another god, will the god of coast guards take care of us? Only the violent can carry away the violence. How long shall we float on our dinghies, O Lord? When we floated in water, the Red Cross did not help us. The helicopters flew over us, took some photos for the news and took off. We have waited a long time, O God. Until when, O God? Tell us, until when? Be still, the Lord is on your side. They arrive with laments and prayers, in life jackets of sinking couch foam. $25 each on top of thousands of dollars paid to the smugglers to get on their dinghies. We flicker the lights on the beach in Lesbos, the flow of peripheries until the center emerges. They paddle on their dinghies, coterminous route to the ferry, Ayvalik, Turkey, Mytilene, Lesbos, for only 15 euros. If they see us and stand up out of desperation or excitement, they will tip the dinghy over. Guardian angel of Exodus. Do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt. You must not mistreat or oppress foreigners in any way. Remember, you yourself were once foreigners in the land of Egypt. You shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land you knew nothing about. You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of your refuge. Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of the strange, home of others, not you. You must not exploit a foreign resident or oppress him, since you were foreigners in the land of your forsaken hope. You are not to wrong or oppress an alien, because you were aliens in the land of new opening. You must not wrong a foreigner nor oppress him, for you were foreigners in the land of a sudden horizon. Never mistreat or oppress foreigners, because you were foreigners living in a sudden despair, suddenly disowned. You shall not wrong an alien, neither shall you oppress him, for you were aliens in the land of what you know not how to become. A prayer of a non-migrant. We stand on the beach in Lesbos and flash the lights for the dinghies in the night. We carry the lights over to bounce the darkness. Just like the pilgrims, paper lanterns scatter the dark for the divine. A woman throws her infant to me. It is icy cold. Afraid to reanimate it, I start crying for help. But the beach is empty. Each grain stretches in wavelengths. Each grain grows into a precipice. I keep holding her hand, but it does not hold up to the landscape. It's throbbing. To stay and to stand, to be steadfast. My hand empty of possession. The vespers I sang in the void fade away. The infant girl whimpers, her breath shallow. Was it the warmth of my body? I marked so many, I'm confused. Volunteer, rough notes. I'm on the beach with 70 irate young men. I keep calling Doctors Without Borders. The doctors warn me against scabies. Men stand in a ring. They set their blankets on fire. I walk around hugging them. Will you marry me? One after another says. I implore them not to burn the beach. A 10-year-old boy approaches me. Smoke? Smoke? He repeats. The confusion is infinite. Finally, I get it, and we share a cigarette. Volunteer Rafnaut store. In the camp, we distribute clothes. They need shoes desperately, but people often send spangled slingback shoes, unwashed evening gowns and prom dresses, wedding garters, tents full of holes. Language is a term that transposes the borders. Do souls have a language? Souls recede into words, up oval. How do they hatch from boats, lacking rib cages, a shelter, a caesura in the sea? Sometimes the moon throws a shadow of the cradle. The soul carries annunciations, opening its dazzling hands. Volunteers' notes. They are soaked, cold. We lay them one by one on cardboard boxes. 2 Afghan brothers, aged 3 and 7, resuscitated next to each other. One survives. To wrap the ice-cold hands of a child, to give oxygen to a toddler. Behind the wailing of the mother. When the white van drove into the graveyard with bodies inside, the female volunteers were asked to carry the corpses of women and children. They pay 13,000 to die. Some, afraid they will die, put a necklace cross in their mouth. The day before the shipwreck, she was singing Palestinian songs. Lina builds her tomorrow. Pray to the crosses in their mouths. Guardian angel of offering. We want God. Instead, we have the poor, gang rapes, prostitution in the camps. You have been told that most of them are young, strong, single men. 10,000 unaccompanied children had gone missing within Europe in 2016. The Pope says migrants are not a danger, they are in danger. You have been told these men cut or burn the skin of the fingers not to be traced. There are children, too, without hands to beg or pray. They are the invisible in these lines. They sit on an invisible stretcher and beat with their wings. They whimper. We want to adopt them, but they are uncatchable. Only the Dibaks remain. They borrow us as vessels to get to the shore. We have the poor with us, but we climb over them through the obstructions to our gods. I couldn't finish without reading about the back, right? The back whispers. I need to be inside you in order to live. In me, you hear whimpering of drowned children. They walk in circles. We walk in circles, gathering all the rings and foxes, Nantucket knots, all the words. If we were to have all the birds, all the ferns, particles and saints, all the yellow birch, eye salmon rose, fiddlehead ferns, ruffed grouse, a flock of seahorses, What could we offer in exchange for one child? And I guess I'll end with a prayer. Refugees' daily prayer. The house cracked from the inside. It plated and meandered in waves. The tree and the house grew into one. The bark entered the house, inmates of shrines of cicadas. A medieval tower with a clock blasted vertically with no slant on its knees, and the clock swooped like an owl, grabbed all the hours and disappeared. Change the stone to bread. Give back the salt, and let olives be relics.